Welcome to episode 158 of the Half Point Per Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Riggs, joined as always by my co-host, Dalton Willie, and our producer, Johnny Pham. Johnny's got his nice new New York studio set up.
Whoa. Doxing me here?
We've talked about the New York move multiple times. I think we're good there.
Set the state. We never said New York City.
Well, I still never said it. You said it. So now you gave that away. If only New York City was not so small, people couldn't find you so easily.
Wow. Hot start here to the pod with a doxing of your producer. But you know what? We've overcome worse, and I'm ready to roll.
Have we overcome worse? I'm not sure about that.
We have.
Dalton, how you doing tonight?
I am doing great. Fantasy football is going swell. Everybody is healthy, and the football season is going exactly as we predicted.
Well, Dalton is clearly in a bad place tonight. So, Johnny, let's make it even worse. I didn't ask about swim lessons last week. I had multiple people follow up. Hey, where's the swim lessons update for Dalton? So I know maybe you had a bye week last week. Are you fresh off a bye, ready to hit the ground running?
No, last week was the start of it.
Oh, okay.
I had a bye on Tuesday for a birthday party, so we didn't attend on Tuesday.
Okay, Dalton had birthday party. You got to miss swim lessons.
But Thursday was a really good example of how you should go about your life. So it's me and another old man. He's in his 50s. He's learned how to swim. And we're starting from ground zero all over again, which is really good for me. Old man is not having it. He doesn't want the kickboard. So we get in the water. We're practicing freestyle with our kickboard. And he's done with it. He says he just wants to freestyle. So our swim instructor says, go ahead. I go down. I come up for some air. I look. The old man is maybe halfway down, huffing and puffing, standing up in the middle of the water. So long story short, just like in swimming, in fantasy football, you need to take it slow. We're all going to get there. Just keep grinding that waiver wire, reading those injury reports, and doing your start sets the right way.
I like how you somehow brought that back to fantasy football. No, it's good. It's good that you're starting from ground zero. Glad to hear that. So how many weeks is this program, and will you be doing all of the same things you just did again last time, or are we because from what I understand, if you fell into a lake, if you have time to get on your back and start backstroking, you're fine. If not, then it might be a little questionable right now.
Well, the problem is we've only learned backstroke and freestyle. So maybe I can freestyle my way 30 feet. If not, I've gotten really good at floating.
Oh.
And with the ability to float, my head would be above water so I could scream for help, which is a positive.
Dalton, a team, an offense that has really been screaming for help so far this year is the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's talk about that. DeAndre Hopkins traded to Kansas City. I don't think it's been as bad as people have made it out to be in Kansas City to start the season. A lot of the underlying numbers still good, but what we all care about is the box score and fantasy football. Those things have not been good, obviously, for Patrick Mahomes. For the Chiefs offense, of course, they are still winning. But two questions here. First, who is the wide receiver one from this point forward for fantasy football purposes for this team? And second thing, if we had to give a number for DeAndre Hopkins rest of season, top blank receiver, where are we going with that?
It's Noah Gray. No. DeAndre Hopkins is the wide receiver one. And I'd put him, he's outside the top 24 by a little bit. I'd say 25 or 26 is probably where I'm slotting him in. Obviously, 2 weeks ago, Juju came in and was getting a ton of positive work. Mm-hmm. My concern is time to acclimate in this offense. I won't be a dead horse, but we've talked about it. Andy Reid has always said his offense is hard to come by. Hopkins obviously has a ton of experience in the NFL and will get the playbook picked up quicker. But also, I don't know how much of our game is going to be centered around passing, especially to wide receivers, just with the success Kansas City has had on the ground. They're the top rushing success rate of any team in the NFL right now. And I don't
Which is amazing because they still haven't had a run over 11 yards. It's all between 4 and 11 yards.
Just gritty, grinded out football. But he's going to have weeks, and I think he's a weekly wide receiver too in any league going forward.
Yeah, so I think the number that I wrote down for this was top 30. I would have him as a top 30 receiver rest of season. And that puts him as the wide receiver 1, but it's really close. And Worthy is definitely going to have weeks where the big plays hit, and he obviously blows Hopkins out of the water. Hopkins will probably be a lot more consistent than Xavier Worthy at this point in his career. I mean, so the early charting from Matt Harmon, who knows a lot more about this stuff than us, is that Hopkins is still pretty good, still able to get open, still fantastic hands, which, by the way, after watching Sky Moore drop his second target of the season, the other one was also dropped. Just going to be real nice to have a guy that we can count on to catch the ball basically all the time. But he's not going to beat man coverage deep down the field, and he's also not like quick enough, agile enough, whatever, to be the Rashee Rice yards after the catch type of guy. So it'll be a different type of receiver than the Chiefs have really had in this run, I think. But I do think he'll be effective. He's a very smart player, as you mentioned. He'll know how to play with Mahomes. I'm sure he'll find the gaps in zone coverage like a Juju, like a Rashee Rice, like a Travis Kelce, obviously does as well. And, you know, Juju had a whole offseason before he started his first year here, obviously, because he signed with them. But Juju did pick up the playbook really quickly. Again, not to say it's the same for Hopkins, but kind of like you alluded to, I do think Hopkins has the ability probably to pick up the playbook fairly quickly. And the Chiefs are in a dire enough situation where they're probably going to have to dumb it down and just get him on the field and just kind of play backyard football a little bit in some cases to go make plays.
Yeah, Kansas City under Mahomes has never had that get up and win it ball kind of guy.
No.
Which it's going to be a different experience with Patrick Mahomes. I think it's a really accurate quarterback and should lead to some pretty interesting moments. It's going to be the first time we've had a legitimate red zone threat. Travis Kelce's always been there, but DeAndre Hopkins in the red zone is going to be a problem. I mean, we're 2 years removed from Kansas City fans being very excited about the idea of Jody Fortson playing in a very diminished red zone role.
Hey, some of us are still excited about Jody Fortson.
I believe he pushed someone into the end zone last week. So
yeah, McCole Hardman.
Yeah, he pushed Mecole in. So certainly excited. We have 2 get up and go ball winners in Jody Fortson and DeAndre Hopkins now.
Yeah, I think it'll be great for Hopkins, obviously, who we both agree top 30. I think if you would have asked me this question 2 days ago, DeAndre Hopkins rest of season, it would have been like top 50, top 45. So it is a bump from bench piece to a solid starter for him. And I do think it probably helps Mahomes out a little bit as well. And Mahomes, I mean, he's going to throw more touchdowns as the season goes on, even if the offense doesn't get markedly more explosive or whatever the case may be. We do have in the Instagram, Dakota wants you to address Purdue. I don't know if you would just thought I'd bring that up because he's now said it twice.
Yes. In our NCAA 2025 Dynasty League, number 3 Michigan State did play 0-3 Purdue and lose 56-0. It was a look-ahead game. Some players made NIL decisions in that game and clearly weren't playing their best football. At one point in the game, we did have to bench starter Mikolop because he was out partying the night before and he wasn't seeing the field appropriately. And there will be conversations in East Lansing this next week about what the Michigan State Spartans are going to do going forward because it was a disastrous loss. Coach Bill Deltrieve is reflecting on it, building on it. And, you know, we've been here before. We've had 2 straight seasons where we didn't make a bowl game. So we're not going to let one loss deter us from the road to the college football playoff. The end of this season, we'll be holding the Big Ten championship over Maryland, of course. And then we'll be on the road to the college football playoff. We're going to hoist that championship happy and healthy. And some of the guys who didn't play well aren't going to be there to see it. I'll tell you that much right now.
I really just wanted to see how long you were going to go. I didn't expect you to turn that into a mini press conference, but I can respect it. Okay, what we are actually here for, we talked a little about DeAndre Hopkins. We can probably get more into that as we actually see things unfold. It sounds like the Chiefs are trying to get him to play this week. We will see if that happens at Vegas for the Chiefs this weekend. But Dalton, we are re-ranking the top 24 for the rest of the season. And when I mentioned this the other day, you said that's going to be depressing. And I think that means it's the perfect sign that we need to do it because there's been so much upheaval. I mean, guys lost to injuries. Chris Godwin for sure would have been on this list. Mike Evans probably would have been on this list. Brandon Ayuk, perhaps on this list. All three of those guys lost for, in two of their cases, the whole season. In Mike Evans' case, it seems like at least a multi-week deal, at the very least, a game. But he had a fairly significant looking hamstring injury. So let's do it, Dalton. Let's talk about it. Top 24, the way we will do it is we're not going to each have our own list. We're going to go back and forth. You pick one, I pick two, and we'll just make a co-list, write it on this very plain white document and call it a day. So your number one overall player rest of season is
Dogs are out. Dogs are barking. It's the big dog. It's Derrick Henry. Right now, he's the number 3 scoring player in all fantasy football, outscoring all but 2 quarterbacks. And we saw in the Tampa Bay game exactly what he can do. We had Chris Collinsworth going on and on about how he wasn't playing in the 2-minute drill. Like, that's new information. But the Baltimore Ravens are committed to letting him get his work in. His worst game of the season, he scored 10.6 points against what we now know is the best run defense in the NFL in the Kansas City Chiefs. He has the most points of any running back to play the Kansas City Chiefs. And he just continues every week to dominate. And I kind of like what I see where they're not asking him to be on the field every snap, because we saw 2 closing game runs from Derrick Henry against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because he doesn't have to be on the field every snap. And when he is, he just gets that full head of steam going. And the Ravens offense is probably the best offense in NFL right now. And if they continue just to get up and down the field like that, he's going to continue to get his touchdown opportunities. He's at 11 on the season. And I mean, he could very well be on pace. I think I said I'd be happy if he scored 19 or 20 touchdowns to start the season. He could be on pace for like 29 touchdowns at this rate. It is an incredible run he's on.
Yeah, I mean, so I have him as my number 4 overall player. And so when I looked around, I looked at a couple different lists just to get my bearings when I was doing this exercise the other day. I don't think anybody had Henry number 1. I definitely think he is one of, I think there's 5 guys you could put number 1. And I think he is in that group of 5 right now for me. I mean, he's the RB1, over 1 point per game more than the next best, which is the guy that I have number 1. Get to in a second. I saw this today. I think it was from CBS. He is first in the NFL in rushes, rush yards, rush touchdowns, yards per rush, rushing first downs, longest rush, scrimmage yards, and scrimmage touchdowns. Turns out playing with Lamar Jackson has been pretty good for a guy who, we kind of wondered, even if he wasn't going to fall off the cliff, how close to prime Derrick Henry is he? I mean, he looks pretty close to prime Derrick Henry right now to me. Like, he still looks like Derrick Henry. The passing game role is really the only thing keeping him from my top spot. And I'm with you that I'm not like freaking out about it. I expected it. And I also agree with you that it's probably a good thing for him health-wise. Yeah, you'd like him to catch a screen pass or 2 a game, but you also don't want him to be on the field for, well, he's never been an 85% of the snaps guy, but I mean, you don't want him to have to grind through all that pass blocking if he can still put up RB1, RB2 numbers. And, this might sound crazy because he's getting the ball a ton, but preserve himself at least a little bit. So I love what I've seen from Derrick Henry. Obviously, I am fully eating crow on my concerned preseason. My number 1 and the number 2, for the sake of our list here, to the surprise of nobody, I'm sure, is Saquon Barkley. And I mean, he's the RB3 with his bye week, RB2 in points per game. He's on pace for 56 receptions this year, which I think if you told people that before the season playing with the Eagles with Jalen Hurts, they'd be a little bit surprised to learn that, hey, this guy's on pace to basically tie his second best receiving season of his career. He had a ridiculous 91 reception season his rookie year. 5 touchdowns in 6 games, on pace for 306 carries, which would be a career high by a decent margin. And he may not be getting the touchdowns on the 1-yard line, but he's still getting plenty of touchdowns, plenty of red zone work, and he has gotten some carries on the 1 or 2-yard line. He's been awesome. He looks every bit as good as Saquon Barkley, as you would expect Saquon Barkley to look on I don't even know if I'm going to say good, but just a functional, moving NFL offense with an offensive line that can create some space for him.
Yeah. Is it 2024 or is it 2018?
Seriously.
It's 1 and 2 on our list. No, the old heads are out, and I'm sure that won't come to bite us in 2 weeks with Bell's going. But he's been spectacular. Last week, he had more offense than the passing offense did for the Eagles through most of the game. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw the clip where Sirianni pulled him aside. He asked him if he was 16 yards away from his career high.
Yeah.
And he said, I just want the young guys to get some work. I'm good. So I love what Saquon's doing in Philadelphia. It's really a very condensed version of this offense right now, which when A.J. Brown is healthy, it's A.J. Brown, it's Saquon, and then sometimes it's Devonta. And that's really the extent of their weapons in this offense. The Eagles' offensive line has still continued to be great without Kelsey. They've slotted in Mailata really well there at center, and I don't have any concerns about him going forward the rest of the season. And the Eagles' offense is definitely a different version of itself. It's not a high-profile passing attack anymore. They're really running heavy and relying on Saquon. And he's had a big play of 20-plus yards in every game he's had this season. So he's really going to be a consistent fantasy producer, and I can't get across him. He was my number 2. So
okay, I was going to say I wasn't going to do this for every person, but I was curious where you had Saquon. So okay, next up on your list.
So next up on my list, I went with Justin Jefferson. So for a couple of reasons, this offense is still moving. Their worst games have been against very good defenses, and mostly that being the New York Jets. Justin Jefferson continues to impress. He is 4th in wide receivers in separation created, and this isn't – we know Justin Jefferson doesn't run gimmicky screens or low-profile slant routes. Justin Jefferson has been a really consistent producer as a fantasy wide receiver. Right now, he's 3rd, and that's with his bye. And in points per game, he's 2nd among players who have played at least 5 games, losing out only to Jamar Chase. The differentiating factor for me on Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase is Jefferson's just been a lot more consistent. All but one of his games, he's been in the double digits in all of his games in half-point scoring. Jamar Chase has 3 games in single-digit scoring. So I'm not particularly a fan of taking somebody that high with the way they're scoring. And I think that the longer we go on with this season and the more comfortable Sam Darnold gets, the better this offense is going to look. At some point, TJ Hawkinson's going to be back, and their offensive line right now on Brandon Thorne's rankings is 7th in the NFL. They've been a good job putting up in protection. And the way their defense is wreaking havoc, they're keeping them out of a lot of bad game scripts. And Sam Darnold is just feeding the guy that's making his day, which is Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, and so I had Jefferson 3, and you said it. He's wide receiver 4. He's had his bye, and he hasn't even had the blow up yet, which he will. He always does. He hit 21 points is his highest scoring game, and he will definitely have multiple games with higher totals than that the rest of the way, assuming he's healthy, of course. Best receiver in the NFL with a QB situation that's turned out to be pretty solid. I mean, maybe Sam Darnold is part of that, and I'm sure coaching and system is a very big part of that. So you like Justin Jefferson after there were concerns about the situation in the preseason. It's great that this is how it's turned out. I do have Jamar Chase ranked ahead of Jefferson. I have him too. Part of that is probably me standing on my preseason call of Jamar Chase as number 1 overall wide receiver, which I had to change because I didn't know if he was going to play there for a minute. But that was what I had earlier in the summer. I mean, you said it. He has been a little bit up and down, and he did have the slow start. I think 2 of those single-digit games were in the first 2 games with no T. Higgins, and I think we've always said that those guys are good for each other. It's never really been a major boom for the other when the other one's not there. So good for him when T. Higgins is out there. And I mean, you're going to see a lot of stuff about T. Higgins getting more first read targets, higher target share, whatever. Like Jamar Chase is still getting Jamar Chase targets. He's still getting a huge target share, getting all the work you want, getting all the downfield work you want. And he still looks like Jamar Chase to me. And yes, he had a couple single digit games. One of them was against the Chiefs and also without T. Higgins. So I'm not going to hold that one against him too much. He has had 1 or 2 explosion games too. And you'll like this one, Dalton. The Bengals defense very happy to acquiesce and get into shootouts, which will probably be helpful for this Bengals passing offense.
That is true. And so what I did, because this is a close one for me, on some of my ties, I went and looked at their playoff schedules. And one of the tiebreakers for Jamar Chase is his playoff schedule is the Tennessee Titans, the Cleveland Browns, and then the Denver Broncos in the championship. And out of all of those, I'm most concerned about the Broncos game in the championship, where he could very likely be a dud.
I just think Burrow and Chase. Obviously, this isn't you saying the bench, but there's some matchup proof that I'm not really adjusting expectations for Chase in any given week.
Yeah. But meanwhile, Justin Jefferson gets the Falcons, the Bears, which is a tough one, and the Seahawks. So he gets 2 of the more softer pass defenses. And again, it's super close with both these guys. I'm not going to bang you for taking either one in this situation.
Okay, Dalton, your next guy.
Next one here might be a little controversial because he's not ranked this highly right now. But I took Bijan Robinson. So over the last 2 weeks, Bijan has been the number 1 RB in fantasy with 21 points and 24.4 points. And I think that this Falcons offense is getting things figured out altogether. His snap share over the last 3 weeks has gone up, and Tyler Algier has started to be phased out a little bit. His passing game involvement has gone up. And I think the Falcons are just hitting their stride under a new offensive coordinator who they were still learning under Kirk Cousins, who was coming off that Achilles injury. And as they continue to get better, Bijan is getting more involved in their game planning, and the offense is kind of clicking on all cylinders with Darnell Mooney and Drake London. So I wanted to rank him higher. And some of the other guys who were contenders up in here, Breece Hall was definitely in consideration. I'm just way more concerned about the trajectory of that offense in New York, and they're already so close in points. Jahmyr Gibbs was up here as well, but I ended up taking Bijan because this Falcons offense seems to be getting better every week, and they're getting better when they're involving Bijan more. So I think that's going to be a lot of their game plan.
Yeah. So real quick, you were just mentioning schedule earlier. That made me look. Okay, who do the Panthers play in the championship? that is Tampa Bay. So cries and Chris Godwin about that one. Hopefully Mike Evans is there and playing in that game, and if so, he's going to win somebody a
Sean Tucker league winner.
Yeah, Sean Tucker, Mike Evans. We should just for 2 seconds. Sterling Shepard, Jalen McMillan, Kate Otten, anybody else we care about in that offense? Do we care about those guys really too much right now, sight unseen?
No, I'd be putting bids on Ricky Pearsall and Cedric Tillman over those 2 guys right now, to be completely honest.
Yeah,
not Jalen McMillan. I'd say it's pretty close.
McMillan's the most interesting on Tampa because he's the rookie. Sterling Shepard, unfortunately, is just going to get hurt because that's what he always does. Okay, I just thought we should maybe mention that just really quickly. Sterling Shepard, league winner. If Sterling Shepard could actually play week 17, he could definitely be that. But that is unfortunately impossible to know for him. So I had Bijan 7, but I'm not going to kill you for 5, obviously. And it's kind of funny, the timing of this. You mentioned RB1 the last couple of weeks. I really felt like last game was kind of the Bijan coming together, like everything for Bijan coming together. He got the volume in the run game and the pass game. He had a couple of receptions in the pass game. He scored the touchdowns, and he just looked incredible. Like there's nobody better at the jump cuts, at the bat, like all of that stuff. He's just unbelievable to watch play. Now, I think the slight separator for him over, like I have Breece Hall ahead of him, and the other guys, obviously, is that I think Tyler Algier is going to be more annoying than the other guys. We've seen Breece Hall kind of separate himself the last couple weeks. More on that in just a minute. But Bijan is incredible, has looked incredible the last couple weeks. The Falcons offense, like I think Kirk Cousins has quelled the early concerns. Drake London, I think we'll probably get to him on this list as well. So feeling great about Bijan, about the Falcons. I think he's going to be awesome the rest of the way. And I do have Breece Hall as my 5, so he's our 6. And it's kind of funny for Breece, just absolute panic in the streets about Breece Hall and his usage. And this is not what we drafted this guy, 3rd overall or whatever to be. And yet, ho-hum, 7 weeks in the season, he's the RB7. I think Devontae Adams, as he gets more acclimated, will help that offense as long as Rodgers is out there, obviously. And Breece Hall, talk about looking great last week. He was unreal against Pittsburgh. He was the only part of that offense that was working. I mean, you get him in space, and he just makes guys look foolish. And in 2 weeks, under their new offensive coordinator, Todd Downing, Breece Hall's taken 84% of the snaps, 83% of the backfield carries, and has 67% of the backfield route share, much higher than the first 5 weeks. And I believe the first 2 are top in the NFL for running backs in that stretch. So all of a sudden, Breece Hall goes from frustrating to arguably one of the best fantasy profiles for a running back. And the talent has never been the question. Now the question is just, can the offense be good enough? I think it can be good enough to where Breece is going to be awesome down the stretch. And I think, oh God, who the Jets play? The Jets play somebody where he has a fantastic matchup this week. I have to look it up while you talk.
I'll get it pulled up for you. Yeah, again, my concern is where is this offense heading? They're 2-5. They're certainly not out of the playoffs, but it's looking. They get Jaguars, Rams, Bills.
Yeah.
And then before that, they play the Dolphins and the Seahawks, and then the Colts and the Cardinals. Oh God, Aaron Rodgers is going to go on a tear and win.
That's a real nice schedule for the Jets.
Yeah, my concern is this offense just can't always get things going when they should be able to, and how much of Aaron Rodgers are we going to get going forward? How much more is he going to try to exert himself in this offense? Because I do think with Todd Downing taking over play calling duties, they've taken away some of his ability to make calls at the line and really condense this into a simpler offense where their offensive line isn't being forced to make new reads when Rodgers calls new plays at the line of scrimmage. But he has his best friend in town in Devontae Adams, and he has his other best friend in town in Allen Lazard. So that's the concerning part. The really good part is Braylon Allen, weeks 1 through 4, he was a real thorn in the side of Breece Hall managers, and he's really fallen out of their game plan and hasn't been used as frequently. So I can't hate the call. I like it. It's just this, out of everybody we've listed on here so far, this Jets offense is by far the most concerning to be a consistent producer in points.
Yeah, although I would say the Eagles offense hasn't been great shakes for certain parts of the year.
That's
of course, the Eagles have been more banged up weapons wise than the Jets have this year. Okay, Dalton, you're next up.
I actually have Kenneth Walker as my 8th player. So Kenneth Walker right now in games he's played is averaging 20 points per game, which would be 3rd best among running backs. He has been unlocked in the passing game under Ryan Grubb in this offense, which has been electric for his fantasy value. First 2 seasons, he averaged 1.2 targets per game. He's up to 3.8 targets per game.
He did finally not set a career high in receptions now it would have been a 3rd week in a row, but he did catch a touchdown.
Yeah, and he's catching touchdowns in the Seattle offense. It's just really exciting. And the Seattle offense has been really good. We talked about it in last week's show. Geno Smith finally hit some of his touchdowns you were talking about. He had 2 last week. So I can't get off of Kenneth Walker. He's one of the few guys who has a good amount of the snap share, and his involvement in the receiving game has just been so exciting because their defense has not been great, especially in rush defense. So he's not getting game scripted out of games. And the Seattle offense keeps rolling. They're leading the NFC West with what they're doing right now. And I think with his averages getting out 20 points per game, I know he missed a few weeks. I just think he's going to keep this tear up and stay on it.
Yeah, I have him 11, but I definitely can't hate on having him further up the list. I mean, you hit on a lot of the stuff with the passing game, and it's not just the involvement. I mean, that touchdown catch he had the other day, he went up and high pointed that catch. It was an impressive play. He's been impressive in the receiving game from a catching perspective, but also we've known this about Kenneth Walker since he's been in the NFL. He is very explosive, very elusive, good tackle breaker, all of those things. You get guys like that more involved in the passing game like he is, it is going to be a boon for the player and the team if all of those things click. And right now it is. And I mean, the only kind of unknown right now I'd say for him is how long is DK Metcalf out? What does that mean for the offense? Do they become less efficient and effective? Does he get more runs? Does he get more targets? I think that's just we can't know how that'll look, so we'll just wait and see. But that is the only kind of question mark because the usage and the player are both great. And at the running back position, you take both those things every day of the week.
Who do you have up next?
So I had A.J. Brown at number 6, so we'll slot him in at 8 overall on the list. I mean, he's only played 3 games, not a ton to say on him, but when he's active, I mean, he's the wide receiver 1 in points per game, 19.5 points per game. He looks like A.J. Brown. He is the weapon in the passing game that you trust with, like you said, Devonta Smith, obviously having plenty of moments as well. But A.J. Brown, great player. Not much more to add other than that. He's awesome. He's been awesome this year, and he'll continue to be awesome down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I had A.J. Brown at 8, so I definitely can't hate it. He's been incredible. Every game he's played, he's had double-digit scoring. I mean, he is the go-to player in the Eagles offense and the first person Hurts looks to. So, yeah.
Okay, next up for you.
I had Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs.
He's my 8, so.
Okay, so we're pretty in lockstep so far, which is good because I think we just made these up off the top of our heads. There's not a lot to hate about how Jahmyr Gibbs is being used in this offense. He's getting his own drives, and then David Montgomery is getting his own drives. He's getting passing down work among all qualified running backs. He's 6th in the NFL in explosive rush rate, and that's with him having less carries than every running back above him on the list. So there's still more meat on the bone to be had there. For a minute, I'm sure some Jahmyr Gibbs managers were really excited when Montgomery limped off the field. He did return. In spite of that, this is another player where I just
as a Jahmyr Gibbs manager, I was not excited. Actually, my first thought was, oh my God, Dalton literally just traded for David Montgomery like 48 hours ago.
Yeah, no, I traded for Montgomery and Mike Evans in the same trade, and I thought both of them were not going to have needs after I got them on my roster. But I really like the way they're deploying him in this offense. Among all qualifying running backs, he has the most snaps out of the slot, which I found really interesting. Only 6% of his snaps have been out of the slot, but he is the one running back that is getting work as a wide receiver as well.
Yeah.
And there's just this Lions offense is so good. Jared Goff has like 4 incompletions over the last 2 weeks. And if they keep rolling this way, especially with the loss of Aiden Hutchinson, they are a team that's going to put up points and a half to every week to stay competitive.
Yeah, I mean, he is. I think he's ranked as like the RB5 right now. I don't remember. I didn't write that one down. But have you seen the all 22 angle of the Madden angle of his touchdown run, his long touchdown run?
I did not.
Oh, you should go look up Jahmyr Gibbs on Twitter and look at it. It is the move he puts on that poor Vikings safety is just. It is very mean. I mean, he just exploded for 30 points, and it was still 16, 17 touches. He is basically the new Alvin Kamara as far as that goes. We've talked about that. We've talked about Montgomery. Don't want to belabor that part of it too much. But really, you mentioned it. The main things are great usage, even though it's not super high volume quite as much as the guys ranked ahead of him. But great usage, great player, great offense. I mean, and he's scoring more touchdowns, I think, through the early part of this year. And he's only had the one that was the 45-yarder, which surprisingly was the longest run of his career. I would have bet he had one longer than that last year.
Me too.
But But yeah, I mean, just an awesome player on pace for over 1,300 rushing yards and 17 touchdowns. That is with a 47% share of this backfield. So just uber efficient. And I think one thing that does have to at least factor into the upside profile of any Jahmyr Gibbs rank is you mentioned Montgomery limping off. He did come back, but where is Jahmyr Gibbs ranked if David Montgomery is not there? Like if he's out for a week, 2 weeks, whatever the case is, like if it were to happen, like that has to be factored in. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs at that point is like RB2, RB1. Like
I think
he's up
I
there.
would struggle to put him. He'd either be right above Bijan or right below Bijan on this list. I'd still have Saquon and Derek over him, but that's just because they are doing what I think he could do in a full-time role in a lot of ways.
We could talk about this part of it more down the road. I don't want to derail us, but I do just want to say that I think you can make a real case for him as the number one running back in Dynasty right now. And we can revisit that in a month or so and talk more about that. But he's been that good, that impressive. And obviously Bijan, Brees, those guys are both right there. And all three of those guys, I think, do at least have some argument to be made. All right, Dalton, next up.
Weird you didn't mention Sean Tucker there. I had Jahmyr, so you're up next.
Oh, yeah, okay. So a little surprised after our CeeDee Lamb conversation that I'm the one that has to put him on the list, but I had CeeDee Lamb at 9 and he's our 10. And I mean, you know, CeeDee Lamb, for as depressing as the Cowboys offense, we do not want David Montgomery to get hurt. Kitchen Leslie, absolutely, we do not. Especially, like I said, Dalton just traded for him. So CeeDee Lamb, 10 overall. Even though the offense has struggled to move the ball, he's still CeeDee Lamb. He's still going to be rock solid down the stretch the rest of the way. And, so, you know, the box scores may not look as pretty as last year, but he is going to have some high volume, high yardage games, I think, down the stretch. And obviously, like when the other options are Brandon Cooks and Tolbert, and I'm as bad as Dalton now, can't remember which Jake Ferguson or Jake Ferguson. Couldn't remember which Cowboys tight end was actually the Cowboys tight end.
I write their names down and their teams every day to remind myself.
Anything to add on CeeDee Lamb? I mean, there's just not much to say about it. Like he's established, even though the team is diminished, he's still awesome. He still belongs high in these ranks.
I will say this probably might be our biggest discrepancy so far. I have 3 players ranked higher than him that we haven't talked about yet. I understand he is incredibly talented. Coming out of the bye, I just need to see something from this Cowboys offense.
How did we flip? Because we were opposite, and now we've flipped, and nothing has happened between when we talked about this last and now. So I'm not sure how we ended up this way.
Last week, I still like him. I just don't like him this high among some of the guys I have above him. So, I mean, he's at 13 for me. So it's not like I'm saying he's dead in the water.
No, dead in the water.
I just have so many. And, you know, what did change is Jerry Jones went on a radio show and threatened to fire the radio show host of a radio show he doesn't own. And
I think that had already happened by the last time.
It might have. But that is the ultimate vibes are bad in Dallas. So I need to see something. I need to see some life from this Dallas Cowboys offense. And he is the only life they have, which is concerning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they can't run the ball at all. Okay. Next up for you.
Next up, I went ahead and put Malik Neighbors.
Okay. That's
who I had above
for me.
Lamb.
Wow.
So
you want to do a rest of the season board bet, Johnny? You want to jot this down? A CeeDee Lamb versus Malik Neighbors?
Yeah, I think Johnny has that. Thanks, producer Johnny.
He's got it. He's got it.
But as much as there's not a lot of life in New York, I've just liked what I've seen from Malik Neighbors. And he misses 2 games from a concussion. He comes back, and the entire New York's offense just wasn't getting the ball moving last week for what it's worth. But this is a guy who, through the first 4 weeks, was pacing to break the rookie receiving record set by Jalen Waddle in receptions per game. He can still do that on his current pace. He just needs a few games where he has 8 or more catches, which is very much in his realm of outcomes. And he has been so explosive. And I can't get away from wanting to have that explosiveness, CeeDee Lamb has that element of explosiveness. Malik Neighbors just has it to another level. And in the same way that
okay, CeeDee Lamb was just the number one receiver in fantasy last year.
a lot of catches, people are saying there were a lot of catches.
That could not have sounded much more like a certain not presidential nominee if you tried.
And I just like what I'm seeing from him so much every week that when I went and made my list, part of my thought was like, who would I just want on my team? And I would want Malik Neighbors over CeeDee Lamb on almost any team I would draft. And I'm just excited watching the guy every week. That's really what comes down to this ranking is it's just an exciting player. And it might be like the new shiny toy kind of thing, but I'm okay with that.
Awesome player. Great start to the season. I'm not concerned about, the concussion, then the slow game back last week. What I am concerned by is that his quarterback has not accounted for a touchdown in his home stadium in like 600 and something days. So there is that. I think I would like to maybe see Drew Lock, and the fact that I'm saying that makes me feel worse about his situation than CeeDee Lamb, who does still have a good quarterback.
Wait until they unlock the jet sweep and the end around motions with Malik Neighbors. It's a whole new level to the game. Malik Neighbors at running back, some people are saying.
So my 10 and the 12 on this list, I mean, it's the most consistent player in fantasy, although maybe not this year just because of week 1, but an extremely consistent player. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, after the week 1 where people were panicking because he had like 3 points, I think it was 1 catch maybe. 17.4, 17, 17.8, 11.7, 21.2. Just rock solid. You know what you're going to get every week. It turns out it is Sam Laporta who is dying a very painful death. 15 targets, I think, through 6 games so far in Detroit. So Amon-Ra is a guy where there's just not much to say about him. He, power slot, great player, great role. Jameson Williams went and got himself suspended maybe for 2 weeks. We'll see. Maybe that leads the Laporta resurgence. But I mean, like, there's not much better feeling than having Amon-Ra St. Brown in your fantasy lineup because it just feels like you're getting at least 15 every week.
Yeah, love it. He was next up on my list. Can't reiterate it enough. Jared Goff still has all but one of his games in a dome. Jared Goff in a dome, we've seen the last couple of weeks, which is some reason he just is electric and he can't miss a pass. And we unlocked a new level of Amon-Ra St. Brown on his touchdown last week where he ran a seam route right in the middle and split the safeties. And with pressure in his face, Jared Goff took the hit and delivered the ball. And that was a hell of a play. I saw the all 22 of that angle, and Jared Goff's probably a half second away from getting hit. And just it was like the meme. He was like, screw it. Amon-Ra's down there somewhere. and he got it. So you can't hate that. My 13, and Evan, this one has been a struggle. And I don't even there was a period where I didn't even put him in my top 24.
And so you have him at 13? Okay.
Then I had him in the top 5. Then I had him in the top 8. And it's really like a quagmire of what to do with this player because he's been, just like Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's been the most consistent running back for 2 seasons now.
Yeah.
And it's Kyron Williams.
Yeah. I started having it before you said his name. I knew that was coming. I have him at 12.
Okay, but he is very hard to rank right now for a couple of reasons. One, like the Rams are keeping him involved, but the Rams offense is terrible. And the Rams very likely.
But they get Cooper Kupp back this week. Puka Nacua designated to return, so reinforcements on the way.
But it sounds like they are really trying to trade Cooper Kupp, which is another part of my concern. And at what point, even if Puka's back, if they do trade Kupp, they're giving it on the season. How long are they going to tag along on the 21-day window? Is it going to be all 21 days just because they don't need him because they know this roster is going down? And how long are they going to give the ball to Kyron Williams the way they're doing it to him right now, knowing that their season is lost and that they're shooting for a higher draft pick?
There's been like these Blake Corum whispers, but nothing has really happened. Like that we want to get him involved, want to give him series, and then
it doesn't happen. Last week, Sean McVay said it's going to be 2-1 Kyron Williams, and that didn't happen, by the way. So
Kyron Williams is like a literal drug to Sean McVay. He just cannot play.
So it's just like it was at the start of the season where he really deserves to probably be ranked higher on both of our lists production-wise. Like, he's produced. He's been really effective. He has a touchdown almost every game, and where he doesn't, he has like 100 rushing yards and still doesn't sell your fantasy team. But on the other hand, he just can't keep getting away with this. Like, he just can't. So I put him. I had him down here at 13, and I feel okay about it. If I was drafting at the turn in this proverbial rest of season redraft, I still don't think I would take Kyren Williams. But you have to give the guys due where it's due.
I am not in danger, Skyler. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
That is Kyren Williams. Like, every time you're afraid for Kyren Williams in some way, whether it is, I think it was week 2 where it's like, oh my God, they have nobody playing. They play, was it the 49ers maybe? They had a tough matchup. Maybe it was week 3. And it's like, Kyren Williams, he might get you 11 points. It's going to be ugly. What does he do? He goes out and scores 30. Like,
yeah,
no matter what happens, this dude just produces. He's the RB4 with his bye, 12 or more points every game. Just last week, ran the most routes of any running back. I don't know if that has been the case all year, but he does run a ton of routes. Like, the only slight concern really is just the Blake Corum thing. For me, even if they trade Kupp, I do think Puka will be back. And as long as Stafford is there, they do maintain a level of viability for this offense. And I just think, like, we just have to give Kyren Williams his due. We've got to have him. You know, I didn't consider not having him in the top 24, but I definitely put him at 12 and was like, I don't like that I have to do that, but I am doing that.
Yeah. I'm glad we're at least in agreement on it, because it was so hard for me to come to a conclusion on him. And he deserves it. I still don't feel comfortable with it.
So 13 for me, and this is just like we have to get this guy on the list, and we'll just kind of see what happens. Next week, he could be up 5 more spots because we see Tua back. I don't know, but I mean, it's Tyreek Hill. Like, Tua's back. I don't know if it's this week, maybe next week, but we're getting Tua back soon. I think it is this week because Tyreek said to fire him up, start him in fantasy this week. And I mean, it's Tyreek Hill. Like, one of the best players in the NFL. It has been abysmal since Tua's been out, but it apparently seems like that just nobody can play quarterback in this offense except for Tua. So, I mean, it's Tyreek Hill. I don't know what more there is to really say about it. He is probably still one of the best 2 or 3 receivers in the NFL, and the Dolphins better get him the damn ball, because that's how they're going to actually win games, is to get that man involved down the stretch here.
I don't know if you watched last week, but actually Jonnu Smith is the answer in this offense.
I did see there was a deep target to Tyreek Hill. Did you see this, where he completely had no idea where the ball was, and he turned his head to look back for it, and the ball like whizzed right by his helmet?
Yes. There's a cut up of his all 22 against the Colts where he's open almost every play.
Yeah.
So yes, Tyreek Hill will be back pending to his brain health. Which hopefully when he comes out, he plays well. He's not wearing a Guardian cap. He's just raw
personal choice, Dalton.
He's just raw dogging football out there. God bless him for it, but there will be a 30 for 30 on him at one point. I can tell you that much. Okay. 15. So next up on the list. So this was a tie for me, and I'm going to go with the guy I don't own in Dynasty, so I'm not a homer. I went with DK Metcalf. So
really, so wait, how long is DK out?
It's unknown. He could be back next week.
Okay, he's not on my list, but I just the injury thing just kind of scared me off.
So I couldn't find any evidence that he was going to be out this week, or it's a long-term injury. Otherwise, he would definitely not be on my list. But in light of the same Kenneth Walker things, he's been incredible. He continues to produce, and this Seattle Seahawks passing offense is 3rd in the league in pass rate over expectation. Yet in spite of that, they're 20th in the league in passing touchdowns. Those two things aren't going to exist forever, and there are going to be games where that passing offense blows up, and DK Metcalf has and will be the prime beneficiary. Tyler Lockett has definitely lost a step. Mm-hmm. The difference is that Jackson Smith-Njigba has not been able to capitalize on that.
Yep.
In fact, in the last 3 games, fun fact of the day, Noah Fant has more yards than Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Oh man, how many consecutive shows can we get Noah Fant worked in? Is now the next bit. We're on 2 right now,
buddy. Let me tell you who 24 on my list is. No, but no. This offense really is condensed around DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker at this point, and they're doing things really successfully. So I'm a big fan, and going forward, pending health, obviously, I'm very excited about how this offense looks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, and for me, it's just the health question is why he was not on my list. Next up for me, I mean, a guy again that I was skeptical on to start the season, and that's Joe Mixon. He's only played 3 complete games. You have to guess, Dalton. How many points do you think he has scored? Not average, but just scored. He has not total, but just like he has scored over blank amount of points in all 3 complete games he's played.
All 3 complete.
Yeah, so not the game
he
got
5-pointer in there, isn't
there?
there?
Yeah, he got hurt in that game.
Yeah, okay. Because when I was looking at him for my rankings, I saw that and I was like, oh, I didn't know that. That makes more sense.
That was the Bears game where he rolled his ankle.
Okay. I would say over 22 points because I know he has like 151 rushing yards in 2 games.
He has scored over 25 points in the 3 full games. Like, think back to Christian McCaffrey's best seasons, and that's about what he was averaging, 22 to 25 points per game. Now, we're not saying Joe Mixon's going to continue that because he would not be 16 on this list if that were the case. But I do think he's made a huge difference in this Texas running game. The fit both ways has been really good. Scheme to player to scheme. And the running game has taken a big dip in the games that he has not played. So he has definitely made a difference. And just I think this running scheme has honestly been a better fit. Less running out of the shotgun, more under center, gap scheme, things like that. This has been a much better fit for him than even Cincy the last couple of years with Joe Burrow at quarterback. And of course, the offense will probably, I don't want to say get back on track, but be even better when Nico Collins returns here in a couple of weeks off of IR.
Yeah. He's been an amazing player. Bobby Slowick continues to want to run the ball on early downs, and Joe Mixon is taking the beneficiary of that. He's not seeing a high stack box rate. He's getting good running lanes for how bad this offensive line has been in pass blocking. It's been above average in run blocking. So they're probably going to continue to kind of grind it out. Kind of a weird trend in the NFL, but all of the best passers are having to run first offenses. Might be seeing a change here. The Chiefs are just ahead of schedule on that. My next player is on a not good offense, but has been absolutely electric for fantasy. He was my tie with DK Metcalf. It's Brian Thomas Jr.
Also not on my list.
That is interesting.
I considered him.
He is a top 8 wide receiver right now. He's top 6. And there are a couple things I'll say here. He has a ton of just misses by Trevor Lawrence and could very likely have more points and be higher on both of our lists if he had gotten those. The second thing is the Jags just played 2 back-to-back London games, which I don't like. And because of that, you don't get to watch a lot of the games unless you get up early and you're a sicko. But when I went back and watched all 22 in both those games, Brian Thomas Jr. has a contested catch in the Patriots game where he absolutely fought Christian Gonzalez for the ball. It was a 60-yarder, I think, and came down with it. And it was a matchup where I didn't expect him to do really well against Christian Gonzalez, who's been a pretty good lockdown corner most of the season. And part of me just wants to see what happens. I think he's getting fired. When Doug Peterson gets fired, this offense has to change a little bit. And Brian Thomas Jr. has condensed himself into Trevor Lawrence's number 1 target in just 7 weeks of the NFL season. He's only going to get better as it goes on. He's only 21 years old, and he still has a lot of routes to his game that he's not perfected. So I'm just really excited about the player, and I really do think that Trevor Lawrence is a really good quarterback. I really believe that. And I know that is a very controversial opinion right now, but I really think Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback and that these two are a really good connection. So I'm just excited about it in general.
I consider them, but a couple of factors here. Number one, he's a rookie, and I just kind of want to see what happens when the NFL adjusts to him, which will happen as the season goes on. And number two, I just don't want to have to think about a Jacksonville Jaguar player in my top 24. I'm so sick of that team, so sick of that offense, so sick of that coach. I'm sick of Trevor. Everything, the backfield, everything. I'm sick of this offense. I just don't even want to think about it anymore. But yes, I'm like he's a great player. Like all in on the future, all in for this year, just not quite to the tune of top 24. But if I were doing honorable mentions, he's probably top 30 overall. A guy that I am all in on, and I wasn't in before the season because I wanted to see how his quarterback looked. Quarterback looks great. It is wheels up for Drake London from this point forward. I mean, talk about consistent. He has been one of the consistent producers in fantasy football this year, which is an unbelievable change from his first 2 years where he would have games legitimately where he scored 0 points and was out there the entire game. So just great to see a great player finally be put in a position by both a quarterback and a coach to succeed. I mean, he's running deep crossers. He's getting separation on those routes. And of course, he's big. So to be that big and to get that type of separation, not a super common thing, a good nuanced route runner, and just everything is coming together for him. He is doing what a big guy of his skill set can do and catching a lot of touchdowns through the first half of the season. No reason to think that can't continue, even if it doesn't quite at the clip he's at right now. I mean, I think he's like wide receiver 3 or 4 right now.
He's 3 right now.
He's really high up there. So I think he'll drop off a little bit, but am just thrilled to see the start that Drake London has had because we've always been a believer in the player. It's just, can the freaking situation be good enough for him to excel? And we're finally to that point.
Yeah, I don't have any qualms with Drake London here. He was next on my list. Like I said on Bijan, that offense is getting better every week, and Kirk Cousins is getting more comfortable behind that line. Mm-hmm. And he is emerging as Kirk Cousins' number one option. And we've seen Kirk Cousins ascend other guys to a next level when they are his number one option. And he's just getting used like he needs to with the downfield targets, with the deep digs. So I love where Drake London is and very excited about him.
Yep. Okay. We have, let's see, 5, 6 more. We'll try and zip through these, get out of here. Maybe hour 5. We're at 58 minutes right now.
Yeah. Next, we can go quick on this one. It's Deebo Samuel.
See, not on my list, but thought about him.
I think he was in your top 24 to start the season.
Yeah, but I just have bad vibes. Like Niners kind of feel like we're teetering on nightmare season right now.
That is true. But with Ayuk gone, he is a prime beneficiary of it. The on-off splits with Ayuk gone are good for him. CMC coming back, I also think is good for him because he doesn't have to actually play running back like he's been asked to. He looked kind of fat on Sunday when he was walking off the field, but that's okay. Keenan Allen looked kind of fat. He hasn't been great, but
it was a real James Harden in the powder blue warm-up situation for Deebo Samuel on Saturday.
Yeah, and this Niners team is fourth in the NFL in pass rate over expectation. They continue to chuck the ball. Deebo's going to have to be one of the guys getting the ball. Hopefully, he's back from pneumonia this week. But I do think bigger weeks are ahead for him.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with it too much because no Ayuk, the volume could certainly be there. Like I said, the Niners are teetering. We're getting close to nightmare season. And it is crazy that Ricky Pearsall was shot in the chest in September, and he is now currently the healthiest receiver on the 49ers depth chart.
Very big for what getting shot does to you because it destroyed Tank Dell's season. Brian Robinson had a good season. Ricky Pearsall is the player to decide if getting shot is good or bad for fantasy outcomes. So we will be keeping up on the shot meter going forward.
I have Josh Jacobs next up at 20. I mean, everyone knows, like, this is a pretty boring pick. Hey, he scored his first receiving touchdown. It only took him like 200 and some receptions. So that's good. Shout out Josh Jacobs. But no, this is a good player, good offense, good role. Don't think too hard about it. The upside may not quite be, top 5 running back, but it's not too much beyond that. And I do still think the player has looked good. He's just had some bad luck as far as just touchdown luck, and also Jordan Love missing games, I think really hurt him too. But Josh Jacobs, I think, still does belong in the top 24.
Yeah, I didn't have him in my top 24. I will say
Surprise,
he's
surprise.
only scored 3 more points than Najee Harris. Much to think about there for those who watch football. But we can move on. Next up for me was a player returning from injury who before injury was a top 5 fantasy back, and it is Jonathan Taylor. Not a lot to say here. In games, he was healthy. Jonathan Taylor had pretty electric outcomes.
He's not on a lot of top 24s I saw.
That's really interesting.
I have him 24, so I have him on.
Good. He went 10, 14, 26, 18 in the games he was healthy.
Mm-hmm.
He's still the RB25 despite missing 2 games. In that time, we have seen players who take over that role be relatively productive. Goodson is now a player that people are talking about as must-have off waivers for when Taylor's not there. Rest in peace, yet again, to our king, Trey Sermon.
Hey, Trey Sermon still got like 10 touches.
Yes. But this Colts offense is a run-first offense. As long as Anthony Richardson is on the field, and the most productive way to get points in this offense is to not catch the ball. Not saying Jonathan Taylor doesn't do it, but he doesn't have to, which is very important to score points in this Colts offense with where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, not to go too long on this one, but I think people are just mad at Jonathan Taylor right now. Mad at the fact that he just missed 3 weeks when they were acting like he might play and not miss any games. Mad at the fact that he's been banged up each of the last 2 years before this year. And so I just think we're kind of like with T. Higgins before the season, who I do have in my top 24. I don't know if he'll make this list. People were kind of mad at him and just kind of cast him aside in the preseason ranks. I kind of feel like that is what's happening with Jonathan Taylor in these rest of season ranks that I see right now. A guy that, I hate putting him on the list, but I feel like I have to put him on the list. And the reason is just kind of, you just have to shrug and say, okay, Dolphins, let's see you now that you can have your real offense back. I still think, Devon Achane is probably worthy of a top 24 pick.
Holy shit. I'm going to be honest with you. This isn't even like I'm not trying to be mean. I didn't even think about him. Legitimately didn't even cross my mind.
Well, the Dolphins have just been that far off the radar in fantasy, but I think he's worthy of a top 24 spot for all of the reasons before the season. We just had an intermission where the quarterback was hurt. That was not the case. That was really bad. Now Tua's back. Hopefully things go back to normal.
Yeah, I can't hate it, especially he can still have that league-winning potential. I'm not going to fight too much on this one, despite forgetting that he existed. So my next one is one people are still probably mad about and a player who you won't have for 2 weeks, but I just think it's so obvious what an impact he has for Houston.
Wait. I thought we were going to go Christian McCaffrey here.
No,
Nico Collins.
He's not on my list.
So Nico's on my list. He's 19 for me.
Yeah, Nico in scoring, he's the second highest scoring wide receiver, only being beat out by AJ Brown. Obviously, both their numbers are inflated because they've missed games, but the passing offense has found the floor in Houston without Nico. CJ Stroud does not have his go-to third down target, and there's just not a lot to say here. Even if I knew he was going to miss 2 games, I would draft him here. I might draft him even higher. Like I would probably draft him over Brian Thomas and Joe Mixon, just looking at our list. But he is going to be here because he still has 2 more games on IR, and we don't know for sure that he's coming back. So there's just a little bit of anxiety. But if he were healthy, he would probably be like 5.
Yeah, he's the wide receiver 2 in points per game right now, only behind AJ Brown. Now both those guys have missed games, so they don't have as large of a sample. But that tells you what kind of year he's having. 18 points per game, and just an incredible player, great role, great offense, all of those things. And so I feel like it's funny, if I were going purely based on my list, the next guy up would be James Cook. I do not want to leave Christian McCaffrey off for James Cook. So I'm going Christian McCaffrey just because if he is really back in 2 weeks, which it seems like maybe 3 weeks, then he's going to be a top 24 guy from this point forward. And if Kyle Shanahan fools me again, shame on me. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what you're supposed to do with Christian McCaffrey right now in rest of season ranks, because if you told me he is back and playing every game remaining he's like 2 overall. Like he's right back up there. Even sight unseen, even coming off the injury, because he's Christian McCaffrey. And this offense, as it turns out, really needs him to be Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one pretty heavily. For me, it's just a matter of if and when he comes back and where this offense is at that point. Because they, like you said, with Debo, they are entering nightmare scenario. Unlike with my concerns with Kyron Williams, I think they know Christian McCaffrey is close to his swan song in the NFL for being what he is. And they will use him, and they'll be competitive for a playoff spot all the way up to the end. So like it a lot. There's just so much uncertainty with him. And like I've said 6 times before, when you go to Germany for medical attention, that's big alarm bells for me. 2 players I just wanted to quickly talk about between you and I, who I didn't rank top 24, but I think there's a case to be made for both of them because of how this position is going, are the 2 tight ends who are consistent, which Brock Bowers and George Kittle.
It's funny because I didn't even consider either one. I just didn't even want to put a tight end in my top 24.
See, I saw several sites making the argument that because they're the only difference makers at the position, that you should rank them. I didn't rank either of them either, but I just thought it was interesting because when you go and you just look at the scoring outcomes among tight end, George Kittle is 29 points above third, and he's 6 points above Brock Bowers, but he also missed a week. And then Brock Bowers is 19 points above third and 20 points above second. And then when you just go down the list, it gets really bad really fast in points per game and in points scored. So I see the argument, but I just thought it was interesting because I think those are the only 2 quote unquote must starts in fantasy football right now at the tight end position. And a lot of other people you're just taking gambles with.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are the 2 top tight ends, but not 2 guys that I thought too hard about in my top 24. Real quick to appease Kitchener Leslie in the chat. Where would you rank Kareem Hunt? Let's just go among running backs rest of season. And I'll say top 30. And I will say that because Pacheco, it does seem like, will be back. I don't know how soon, but he'll be back sooner than like Hollywood Brown. He'll probably be back the fantasy playoffs. Now, with that said, we've kind of been kicking around the idea of, I don't know who's going to lead this backfield in the second half of the season if/when Pacheco is back. I don't know who should or will, but I do think both these guys are probably going to play a lot, and it's going to make them both probably pretty frustrating for fantasy, but also usable for fantasy down the stretch would be my guess.
Yeah. I mean, he'd be in my top 60 probably between him and Pacheco. I do think it could get frustrating.
Top 60 overall.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I said top 3 at running back. I wanted to make sure.
Yeah. But it's just going to be a frustrating split at some point or another. And I do think, in spite of how well he's played, that they can't keep giving him 20, 24, 25 rushes a game. And that's just not how that offense is going to be productive.
No, and I don't think that's what they want to do. I think that's what they have to do right now.
Yes,
so totally agree with you there. And Kareem Hunt's played well enough that, if they weren't worried about killing him, then they'd probably be like, okay, this is great. But he's 29, and you want to have as many guys healthy for the playoffs as you can when you've already had multiple weapons go down. And Dalton, on that note, that is going to do it for episode 158 of the Half Point Per Podcast. Give us a follow, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Half Point Per Pod, the YouTube Half Point Per Podcast. The link to all those things in the show notes, as always. The show is available anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, etc. Leave us a 5-star review, and we will talk to you again next week.